I think the Peace Symposium was very impressive, especially what His Holiness said about the war in Ukraine, about the relation to the Quran, the Holy Quran, and what governments should do and should not do. So helping the country that was attacked, Ukraine, yes, but not in such a way that it will only fuel the conflict. And that now is not the time to talk about reparations and other aspects, sanctions after the war. Now is not the time. I think those were wise words.
Words from His Holiness, which are very spot on, emphasising the need for governments, for societies, for people to have the focus on peace. And it was interesting and refreshing that he's not a politician, he's a religious leader. He didn't hold back in his comments. He was very clear and quite blunt about, the need for countries to have peace, and, for example, in the future not have the Ukraine and Russia one side trying to get back on the other, and for countries to have proportionate force in the support that they provide for the Ukraine.
It was a really important message. What I found quite impressive was that he was able to talk about stuff that was somewhat unorthodox and outside of the Overton window, but still very much true and important. So when it comes to NATO's encroachment on Europe and how he gave a context and a backstory behind the Russian war that a lot of people a lot of politicians, a lot of people elected like myself, a lot of journalists would be somewhat fearful of talking about. And he being a holy figure doesn't have those same concerns or limitations or fears that others would. And he brought it up in the right context as well, without trying to excuse Russia's aggression. It was a really quite cool speech, giving a really an encompassing perspective of the whole situation. That's important.
His Holiness spoke very movingly about particularly the war in Russia and Ukraine. I think I was struck by the admirable mercy that he showed for the Russians as well as the Ukrainians. I think it can be very easy to demonize one group and to create an artificial polarization when it comes to war, but he spoke with kindness and about moderating our defense of ourselves to purely defensive actions.
His Holiness just gave an amazing speech, which is very much into the Muslim faith, but also for non-Muslim people. It's very relevant, very important, because he says basically that true people, true believers, and true people from God need to unite without any compromise on their religious beliefs, still getting together to work for harmony and peace. And this, I think, is a message from a man from God.
The end speech was from His Holiness was just amazing, and I think chimes in very well with my own thoughts about the fact that you shouldn't meet aggression with aggression, because you're making yourself the aggressor again. So, and I think that message which ran through his speech was just spot on. We share a common humanity, that actually we don't meet aggression with aggression, but that to me was the powerful message coming out of that, and it's one that I shall repeat. I shall tell people about what I've heard this evening with great joy.
I remember His Holiness was quite pessimistic 4 years ago. I think much of what he feared then has now come to pass, and it is quite a sobering message, and really the need. You can't resolve things by war.
I found his comments on the, how can I put this, the talking of Russia and the Ukraine situation, and how threatening dire consequences before peace has even begun is certainly, there's a certain logic to that. So sort of, if you've got nothing to lose, then why would you ever stop? So, that was a very interesting perspective. It's not one I'd heard before.
That His Holiness always talks about peace and makes it a key issue of his message to the community and the world, I think is so important. We need more people with the status of His Holiness to get that message, and we politicians should listen to him. The theme that he was talking about was the foundation of true peace, and I think he was linking it to how we behave and how we think and how we treat other people. He was also talking about actual events in the world today, and it's essentially challenging us to do more. I was very fortunate. I was sitting next to His Holiness this evening, and I had a long chat with him about many things. But he said after his speech to me, now the ball's in your court. So I think what he meant was politicians have got to work ever harder in whatever capacity that we have to make the argument for peace.
For me, the speech of your Khalifa was something special, because I was born in Ukraine, and that is very close to me what he was saying about humanity, about that humanity first, that we need to do something to stop all these brutalities, and that for me that is another proof that you are not only concentrated about your own problems, about your own issues, one country or whatever, but you are just thinking about the whole world, and that is really great, that love for everyone, hated for none.